Okay. That noise was my chair. This is from Executive Order. Um, I guess it's 43256. That might be the page number, but it's Federal Register, Volume 64, number 153, Presidential Documents. This is from an executive order signed by Clinton. And we're talking about federalism. Acts of the national government, that's the United States, whether legislative, executive, or judicial in nature, that exceed the enumerated powers of that government under the Constitution, violate the principle of federalism established by the framers. And this is my note: federalism. When quote unquote laws do not comply with quote unquote federalism, they are not in compliance with the Constitution. They are outside the Constitution. They are followed voluntarily. I've got a few other things I can read in here, but I want to show you this website. This website is a government website that goes over the approval process for certain regulations. Okay, so this one, let's see, this is from reginfo.gov. It is an official website of the United States government. And I go through here and I do some things and I run some searches and I can come up with some documents that are either have been through the process or are going through the process of being approved. So this is from the Department of Agriculture, or the agency that it's going to apply to. And people generally believe that the various agencies of the federal government have some sort of uh, law power against citizens of the states. And what this says, and this is again a website that shows the information that is in the process of being reviewed by the government, and it has to answer certain questions. Okay, this one's currently up on the website and you can find it, RIN 0503-AA81, fall 2024. Federalism. So does it comply with federalism? The answer is no, but they're still going to pass it. Okay, it's still going to pass it. And we've been told over and over and over again, and we've heard over and over and over again that when the government does something outside the Constitution, it does it without authority, and the people follow it voluntarily. This is a voluntary law because it's not federal. It doesn't comply with the ideas of federalism. Acts of the national government, whether legislative, executive, or judicial in nature, that exceed the enumerated powers of that government under the Constitution violate the principle of federalism established by the framers. This violates the principles of federalism established by the framers. Federalism, no, it does not comply with the ideas of federalism. It's not federal. It's not by force. It has to therefore then be voluntarily followed. If you don't want to follow it, it's just void. It's not voidable. Some might say that you can't even follow it voluntarily because it's void. But yet people follow it. Agencies are created. Agencies follow these rules. They follow them voluntarily. Uh, if they don't follow them, then things happen. They get fined or what have you because they don't argue for the fact that it wasn't even a law in the first place. So let's look at another one. That was delegations of authority. USDA AG Secretary. Let's look at this one. Well, let's go down to USD. I'm sure that all of the USDA stuff is not federal because the USDA is not something that's in the Constitution. So a long time ago, the federal government needed lands to grow crops and raise animals to feed the military. And what they did was, because that right to have lands wasn't in the Constitution, they had to make private contracts with states that would allow them to use some lands, and they would use these lands to do the work that they needed to do to have the food that they needed to supply to the military. Um, Part of the problem with that was that some of those people were then using those crops to make moonshine or distill spirits. And that's when the federal government came out for its federal lands, and anybody using federal lands inappropriately, they came out with prohibition, because the states were like, hey, you can't, we didn't give you this land so that these people can be making alcohol. We gave you these lands so that you could, grow crops and raise animals as food for the military. So this one also, supplemental nutrition assistance program standard utility allowance based on the receipt of energy assistance payments. Federalism, no. Go down to DOC. Let's make a bet. $10 says no. Federalism, no. DOC NOAA. Amendment 126 to the fishery management plans for groundfish of the Bering Sea Aleutian Islands Management Area, and Amendment 114 to the fisheries management plan for the groundfish of the Gulf of Alaska. So this is probably just a contract that the federal government has with one of the states or several of the states to do certain work, um, for whatever reason outside of the Constitution, meaning the federal government has a contract with certain states, and then they write these um, voluntary laws that are not federalistic but comply with the contract between that state and the federal government that the state would then agree to. Government levels affected, none, because it's a contract. Okay, probably a contract. Let's see. DOD. This might comply with the ideas of federalism because it's a DOD regulation, and DOD is Title 10 and is in the Constitution. Let's see. Federalism, no. Let's see what it says. Inapplicability of additional disease, unique laws, and certain non-statutory DFARS clauses to commercial item contracts. Okay, so this is commercial contracts between, looks like, uh, DOD and DARK outside the Constitution because it's a contract. 48 CFR, 41 USC. So we can look up 41 USC public contracts. So the federal government has a right to make federal contracts, and we see that it's constitutional because it has a positive law citation somewhere. It should anyway. If they're saying, if there's an asterisk here, they're saying that it's a positive law. So if it's a positive law, there should be a positive law citation in here. Did I miss it? Enactment, repeals. I don't see a positive law citation in here. There could be a positive law citation at the very end. Sometimes they're not at the beginning, and that means the whole title is not positive. That just means that that portion after the positive law citation is positive. So I don't know where the positive law citation is for this. It's interesting though how they can do things that uh, seem a little like a trick. So this is a contract. So that was a contract between the federal government and Dark.